If you've been following my build, welcome back. In this episode, what I'll be doing is metal work on the cab. If you're new to the channel, welcome. And what I'm doing is putting this 1956 International pickup onto this 2002 Cadillac Escalade frame. Previously, I had it sitting on here, I fitted things up, and I've got to do a slight modification to the cab here. The one valve cover was interfering with this corner on the cab, so I've started to do metal work on that. I'll talk about that a little bit more later on. But while the cab's off here, I'm going to patch all these holes in the firewall, and I've got a little bit of rust in the back cab corner. I'm going to attempt to fix that too. I was just thinking about putting a dent in the firewall up here to give me the clearance, but I decided this would look a lot better. And that's the old corner that I cut out of there. And I wanted to make this look nice and neat and clean, so the idea is to have one flat piece of metal there, so it looks like I just cut that corner off. And so I tried something new. I shone a light at the same angle here I wanted to cut, and then put a straight edge there, and then I traced a line onto the cab corner, and then I traced that line out onto a piece of paper and head on here and flipped it over and drew that line on the other side to make it symmetrical, and then cut out that piece of metal and made a template out of cardboard that would fit in there, and then transfer that to metal. And that's what you're seeing in there, is that piece of metal. It all worked out pretty good. Actually, I'm surprised. First time I've done that and didn't think it would work this well. So anyway, the next step will be to weld that in there. It's been a while since I've been doing welding, so hopefully I'm not too rusty. Well, I got it welded up, and yes, I am a little bit rusty. I did that at the end, and that actually looks pretty good. So hopefully the rest will go a bit smoother, but I guess if you're not a good welder, you better be a good grinder. So we'll see what that looks like after I'm done grinding it. Well, that cleaned up pretty good with the grinder. I'm pretty happy with that. I don't think that will take much filler at all before I can put some paint on it. I'll just take a look inside here, see what it looks like. That too is presentable in there. It's going to get sound deadening material over top of it, so won't really be visible, but looks like nice sound wells. Just to recap, this is what came out of there. It's not a huge change, but should give me just enough clearance. So now to start on all these other holes. I'm just getting ready to weld in a few more patches, and this one I shaped exactly the same as that one. Just basically traced a template out on cardboard and then transferred that to steel. Kept on trimming it until it fit pretty good. Put a little break in it there to get that bend at the bottom of the firewall. I just did that in the bench vise. And then I've got a few of these round holes, plugs cut out for them. A couple more up here yet. And the way I've made those slugs, it's just over on the drill press. What I did is I took a hole saw, took the drill out of the center, clamped a piece of scrap 16 gauge steel in there, had to hold on to it a little bit as well, and then you can see I just basically cut slugs out. And then after I was done cutting them out, take them to the bench grinder, clean them up a little bit, and that's basically it. So now I'll weld those in and patch up all the little holes and see how it turns out. Well, I've got all the holes welded up. 43 in total is what I counted. A lot of welding. Bigger ones I made slugs for, like I mentioned before. Smaller ones, anything smaller than about a dime, I just welded them in. Even one that size, I welded in. Now there's a lot of grinding. Well, it cleaned up pretty good with the grinder. As you can see, some of these spots won't even need filler on. It came out nice and smooth. Where the steering column went through, that one's going to need a little bit of filler on it. There's a flange around there that I had to hammer flat first before I put the patch panel in. And probably wasn't perfectly flat with that to begin with, so it'll need a little work. But everything else looks good. What I did is I went over it first with the grinding wheel, and then 80 grit flapper sand disc on the angle grinder, and that seemed to make a nice job. As you can see, I put a little bit of filler on there. Just getting it prepped up for paint. We'll put some primer on it and see what it looks like after that. I'm pretty happy with the way that turned out. It's not perfect, but sure isn't bad. I like the way that little cut-off corner worked on there. You can see it from here over there. It doesn't really jump out at you, and that's kind of what I was going for. I'm just going to leave it in primer for now because I've got to drill some more holes. Right about here is where the brake booster goes, and then I've got to drill a couple holes here for the heater lines. One for the steering column that's going to be shifted over from where it was, and then one more for the wiring loom. I'm not quite sure where I'm going to put that one yet. And once that's all in, I'll touch it up again and then paint it red. And I think I found a perfect red paint for it too. International red. It's for international tractors, but I think I read somewhere they actually used the same paint on their trucks, and this might be pretty close. So anyway, that's what I'll do, the firewall and the interior. Yet I plan on putting new paint in there. Next is this cab corner. So here's a closer look at that cab corner. And yeah, there's a fair bit of rust there. It's rusted on both sides, the outside and the inside. So what I'm going to do first is just cut away the rusted metal here so I can see what that inside panel looks like. And maybe fix it first. And then for the outside, what I'm going to try to do is use this cab corner here. It's not for an international pickup. They don't make the cab corners for these internationals, but this is off of a Chevy, 47 Chevy, I believe. And these are readily available and not that expensive. So I think I can probably take a piece out of there and be close enough curve that I can make it work on here. I might have to do a little bit of modifying. Well, I know I will have to do modifying to make it work, but hopefully this gives me a good start. Well, there's a little bit more rust in there than I had originally thought. The back panel was rusted quite bad, so what I'm going to do, instead of fixing it first, I made the patch panel for the outside skin. I cut that out of that 47 Chevy one, and I had to change the curvature a little bit and do a bunch of kerf cuts down at the bottom. I'm going to weld that all up and grind it down and make it look a little bit better, but I've got it fitting pretty good on there. I'll just hold it up and you can take a look. It's not bad. And what I'm going to do is just cut this out completely, the whole bottom part here, and then trace that line from the new patch panel on here, cut that out, and that will give me room in behind there to weld on the inside panel. And once I get it welded on, then I can weld on this outside panel. Okay, I've got that patch panel fit in there and that piece cut out. I think it's close enough that I can weld that in, and hopefully it turns out okay. I'll show you how I did the inside patch there. I haven't made it yet, but I've made a template for it. I'll just try to pull off these magnets here. And then you can see I slid this piece of cardboard inside, and it had fit inside this piece. See if I can show this here. It had fit inside there like so. And then from the back, I was able to trace this piece, that cut line that I put in there. And I think I've cut that back to solid metal now. So once I transfer that onto this cardboard and cut out this template and make that into metal, I should be able to weld that in there first, and then once it's in, I can weld in this patch panel, which you can see I welded up those little kerf cuts and smoothed it out a little bit. What I'm going to do too with this panel is at the bottom there where I've got those lines, I'm going to make a few tabs, and that will allow me to fasten it onto there. Well, I got that corner welded in, and I'm happy with the way that turned out. I don't know if you can see inside here. Wells are not pretty in there, but got the inside piece in as well. It's looking not too bad. Now I'll grind that down, and probably will need a little bit of filler, but I think it should be pretty good. I ground the wells down and sanded it, and it looks good. I'm just going to put a really light skim coat of filler on there and some primer and see how it looks after that. That corner turned out not too bad. The primer is still drying on there, so it looks a little bit uneven. But overall, I think it came out pretty good. I'm going to leave it like that for now. Eventually, I'm going to try to match up some of this patina and repaint that. But I'll wait till it's on the truck so I can see better how it's going to look with all the other panels. So that is pretty much a wrap for this episode here. I think all the metal work is done on this cab now, so now it's time to move on to some of the other stuff. Maybe get the cab and the front clip back on the frame and start building some mounts.